Hi there, this is a video running through the Google Ads user interface because this can be a little bit confusing to navigate, especially if you're a first-time user and have only used a more simplistic platform like, for example, Meta Ads. So just to reference, there's obviously a huge amount of detail that I could potentially go through here, but I want to keep this as consolidated as possible and just focus on the primary areas that you'll be using within Google Ads. First thing to note is that if you need anything or need any context in terms of where to find anything or how to do anything on Google Ads, ChatGPT is a very good resource for this, and it gives very good direction in this regard. So I'd highly recommend using that if need be. You've also got the search bar up here if you're struggling to find a certain section in Google Ads. So minimizing my face and diving straight into this. First thing, we've got 5 different panels on the side here. So campaign, goal, tools, billing, admin. You'll be spending 95% of your time in the campaign section here, but just to touch on these other 4 sections. So admin, obviously pretty self-explanatory, all admin related settings in here. This is where you assign access to various emails in terms of access to your Google Ads account. Billing, this is obviously where all your billing details, payment methods, etc. are stored. Main thing to note here is the advertiser verification. This is something you'll need to fill out if you're looking to run Google Ads long term. You can start running Google Ads without completing this, but you'll get prompted to complete this at a later stage. So no stress there really. In terms of tools, again, not much used here. The only thing you'll need to use primarily during the setup phase is the script section here underneath bulk actions to add in a script, particularly for the branded shopping campaign into Google Ads as well. But once you've installed that and set up the campaign, you shouldn't need to really touch this section. Then the goals section, pretty much the same goes for this. This is where all your conversion actions or essentially campaign goals are set up. And again, once you've set up the primary purchase conversion action, which is generally speaking the only conversion action that an e-com focused brand will be using, once you've set that up, you shouldn't really need to touch this goals section either. Again, there's a link on how to set that purchase conversion tracking up in the video description. I've recorded a separate video on how to do that. So when you hit Google Ads for the first time, you should land on this home page here. And the main area you want to be focusing on is the campaign view. So just hit GC on your keyboard and that should take you to the campaign section automatically. As you can see there, it takes me to the campaign section. So just a quick shortcut to always get back to this kind of home page here. So first step you'll need to do, and what I'd recommend, is setting up your columns so that you're looking at the right data in Google Ads. So to do that, just hit the columns button here and then modify columns. And just to remove that blur for the moment, I'd recommend setting your columns up in the following layout. So again, you can just search for the column in here, perhaps pause this video and then set the columns up on your end to align with this layout here. So number 1 being cost. This is how much your campaign or ad group has spent. Conversion value per cost. This is the equivalent of return on ad spend. So what is the conversion value that you generate relative to the cost or the amount that you spend? Conversions. These are the number of, for an e-com brand, purchases that occur. Average CPC. This is how much you paying per click on average. Cost per conversion. How much it costs to generate one conversion. Clicks. Pretty self-explanatory. Impressions. This is how many times your ad has been seen by a customer but not clicked. Seen by a customer, not necessarily clicked. Conversion rate. This is essentially what percentage of clicks actually result in conversions. Conversion value. This is the amount of actual revenue that is generated by your conversions. Search impression share. This is essentially what percentage of the total impressions that you could potentially serve for are you serving for. So essentially, how much of the available search volume are you capitalizing on? And that's all search volume. Then search absolute top impression share. Of the total impressions that you could receive, what percentage of those are you appearing at the absolute top of the search results for? And then top impression share, what percent, so same breakdown as absolute top, but what percentage of the search impression share are you appearing just in the top few results? So once you've laid that column setup out, you can just hit save preset and you can just give that whatever name you'd like there. I've already got a preset, so I'm not going to save it in this scenario, and you can just hit save and apply there. and that'll take you back out into the campaign view section here, where you'll obviously see your potential campaigns that you are going to set up, and then all of the relevant columns with the relevant metrics up the top here. And in the column section, unfortunately I can't show you here because it goes into that blur, but under your column sets you'll see your preset column set there. Now the next thing to note here, if for whatever reason you can't see your campaigns appearing, is the status option up here. So you've either got all enabled and then enabled and paused. So as you can see here, if I select the enabled and paused option, it pulls up all of the paused and enabled campaigns on your Google Ads account. Obviously, a lot of these won't be relevant because you're only going to be really looking at the ones that are enabled. I'd highly recommend not deleting campaigns because that deletes the data from the account and it can skew any reporting in terms of how much you spent during different time periods. So just pause campaigns that you aren't using, and the same goes for ad groups as well. Now, just heading on over to a Canva doc here, just to explain the overall structure in terms of kind of how these campaigns are set up, and then just a very brief overview of the campaign structure that I'd recommend for e-com brands. But I've created a more detailed video going over this, and that's linked below. So the campaign structure on Google Ads is kind of similar to Meta Ads, but different in most ways. So for e-com brands, and particularly smaller e-com brands, there are really three main campaign types that you want to be running. So first is a search campaign, where essentially you can change the budget at the campaign level. Then you've got what's called an ad group, which is essentially a subgroup within the campaign. And then you've got your different ads that you can launch within the specific ad group. So you can launch however many ads you like. Generally, I'd recommend just one ad per ad group is the best practice there, but you can launch multiple ads in one ad group if need be, and that's for a search campaign. Then the second is a shopping campaign. So again, you've got the campaign with budget set at the campaign level, and then you've got different ad groups within that shopping campaign, and you can assign certain products to the specific ad groups in that specific campaign. And then lastly, you've got what's called a performance max campaign, or a PMax campaign, and again, budget is assigned at the campaign level. And then you've got different what's called asset groups in this campaign, because essentially, in a nutshell, this campaign serves across multiple different networks. So search, shopping, display, etc. So it uses multiple different types of assets. So written assets, headlines, descriptions, image assets, images. It uses shopping assets as well. So the shopping product feed that is pulled from your website into the merchant center, and then any sort of videos, etc. that would be pulled from the YouTube side. So all of those assets are linked into one asset or multiple asset groups within that Performance Max campaign. So this is the recommended structure that I'd recommend running for smaller e-com brands on Google Ads. So a brand search, very simple structure there. Then a branded shopping, again, video link below. Then a cold shopping campaign, where you essentially split your product range out into the relevant categories within that campaign, and then potentially a Performance Max as well, following the same approach, where you essentially split your product categories out into different asset groups as well. And then if you are running a sale, you put all of your sale assets into a specific asset group to run within Performance Max. Again, very brief overview. I've created a separate video running through this in more detail. Now, if you want to find any, different piece or aspect of your campaign, you can select your campaign up the top over here, and then you can pull up the relevant details for that. So obviously this is a shopping campaign. So if you wanted to pull up the campaign settings, so what bidding strategy you're using, what location you're targeting, etc., you can click on the campaign settings option there, and that'll pull up the obviously campaign settings. If you want to pull up the different ad groups within that specific campaign, you can either select the individual ad group that you want to pull up by clicking on this drop down here, or you can go to the ad groups section here, and that'll pull up the relevant ad groups within your specific campaign over here, as you can see. If you want to see what products are broken down in your individual ad groups, select your ad group from the drop down. So select your ad group there, and then hit product groups. And then from there, you'll be able to see exactly what products have been added into that specific ad group. And then the same goes for the search campaigns as well. So if you wanted to pull up the specific search campaign, obviously select your campaign there. You can select ad groups. As you can see here in the ad group section, we don't have the option to pull up products because this is obviously a search campaign, but you have the option to pull up ads within the specific ad group that you select within your search campaign. If you want to pull up any details around the audiences that you've excluded, the keywords that you're targeting within that search campaign, etc., break that down in this section here, and you can obviously pull that all up within your search campaign. Then on the other hand, if you are running a Performance Max campaign, again, you can pull that up using the campaign drop down here. And then as mentioned in that breakdown, you have the asset group section here. Now, just to note that you can swap that between a table layout and a summary. I highly recommend using the summary layout here. This is just easier to see. And then you can obviously see your different categories that you've broken your Performance Max down into. And then you can edit the listing groups. So this is what products are included into the specific asset group. Edit assets. These are all the text and image assets that are included into your asset group, etc. And you have multiple of those, as mentioned, potentially broken down by product category, and then one for any sale assets that you're running during a sale period. So that hopefully gives you a good but brief and top level overview of the areas in Google Ads that I'd recommend focusing on and understanding. If you have any specific questions, please feel free to drop those in the comments below. Again, just for reference, I've created more detailed videos around all of those areas that I mentioned in this video, so feel free to go check those out as well. Otherwise, I hope you found some value here, and thanks for your time.